Good morning. My name is Olajide Olagunju, and I'm the author of How to Resolve a Conflict, which is a book right there in front of you. Today is the fourth in a lecture series titled How to Resolve a Conflict, the same title as this book, which will guide us in this discussion as usual. We are now in chapter 2, and I will quickly take us there. As we do, we'll read and then have a discussion around the what we read from the book. Chapter 2 is titled, What is Mediation? And as I said, we'll read and then we'll have a discussion. What is mediation? It begins with a quote at the top of the chapter. It says, quote, "Trip for me as I trip for you. That is the fun in dog play." That's in a Yoruba adage. Trip for me, same thing as saying, fall for me as I trip for you, as I fall for you. That is the fun in dog play. If you've seen dogs playing, you see that's precisely what they do. They're constantly falling and tripping for each other. As we go along, we get to understand what that means as a way of describing what happens with mediation. This idea of mutual falling, tripping for one another, giving and taking. But let's begin with the definition of mediation that we have in this book. It says, mediation is a, quote, forum in which an impartial person, the mediator, facilitates communication between the parties to promote reconciliation, settlement, or understanding, unquote. That quote is from the 1987 Texas ADR Act. That's the law that was passed and established by the state of Texas to guide the process of mediation, also known as Alternative Dispute Resolution, ADR. Now, let's look at that definition. It says mediation, or what I've called in the earlier lecture series, effective conflict resolution, amicable conflict resolution, is a forum in which an impartial person, the mediator, facilitates communication between the parties to promote reconciliation, settlement, or understanding. Note that I have already mentioned earlier on, I believe in lecture 1 or 2, or maybe 3, that you could have self-mediation. That means the idea you are learning in this lecture series could be used to resolve your own personal conflict. So it's not just mediating between other people, but also between you and or your business and other businesses or other people at various forums, marital, business, partnership, whatever. Now, the emphasis here is that we use the skills we are learning here to facilitate communication. And the end is to promote reconciliation, settlement, or understanding. In other words, if you have the skill, if you have the skill of a mediator, you can use those skills to ensure that you move the parties in conflict, even when it's yourself, from uh, their conflict to an amicable settlement, to a mutual understanding, to a reconciliation, which resolves the conflict. So that's what the ADR Texas Act is saying. But there's another definition I have here in the book. It says mediation has also been defined as, quote, a private, voluntary, and informal process where a party selected neutral assists disputants to reach a mutually acceptable agreement. During mediation, there's a wide opportunity to present evidence and arguments and to explore interests of the parties. The mediator is not empowered to render a decision. That quote, unquote, that quote is from the American Bar Association Alternative Dispute Resolution, an ADR primer, and that was published in 1989. Well, the second definition is essentially similar to the first definition from the Texas ADR Act. Again, essentially, it talks about the fact that mediation is private, so it's not done in the open. It's voluntary, so you are not forced to do it. It's informal. In the sense that, informal in the sense that there are no binding it's done in an atmosphere of informality. I'm very careful with the use of my word because the use of the word informal may make us think that it is not binding. No, if parties agree at the end of the process, the agreement is binding. It can be enforced. It's because it's a contract. But if you compare the courtroom or an arbitration to mediation, you begin to understand what we are referring to here as the informality in mediation. It means that it is not a rigid process. It's flexible. In the court, you may not have that kind of flexibility, that kind of informality, conviviality, but in mediation, you could have that. You could have a lot of back and forth, and you are not bound to stay there. I mean, if it's not working for you, you could always leave. As long as an agreement has not been reached, parties are at liberty to leave the process. This definition also talks about parties selected neutral as the mediator who assists disputants to reach a mutually acceptable agreement. Now, I've already said that the mediation could be a self-mediation, i.e. between you and another person, between your business and another business. What's critical is the skills that is involved. So whether it's a negotiated settlement, which are called self-mediation, or the regular mediation, where somebody, a third party, helps you to resolve a conflict with another person. The emphasis is what is the mindset, what are we, what goes on in this dispute resolution process. During mediation, there's a wide opportunity to present evidence and arguments and to explore the interests of the parties. The mediator is not empowered to render a decision. So what I think the most important thing I've not said here is that the mediator is not empowered to render a decision. So it is the decision is the decision, an agreement of the parties. So it is not an imposition. So essentially, the mediator is facilitating a movement from conflict to resolution. But the end product is not owned by the mediator, it's owned by the parties. So that's mediation. That's amicable dispute resolution. Let me read just a little bit more before we move on. Note that while the definitions seem to stress the role of a third party, the principles of mediation are also used for negotiation or direct discussion between parties in conflict who are exploring a satisfactory outcome for both parties. As I said in the preface, direct negotiation will eventually become the norm. This will happen when we have all individually learned to speak peace. That is when we've learned to apply the skills that is applied or used in mediation. However, in the meantime, mediation, which I call assisted negotiation, is necessary as a bridge until we all learn to talk directly to one another whenever we are in conflict. So we can refer to this integrative direct negotiation process as mediation or self-mediation. I already explained that. I think we'll stop there for today, and then please post your critique, your views on what we have discussed so far. We'll continue the discussion in lecture 5. Thank you very much.